What a delight it is to welcome you to this guest panel, a presentation of the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival in conjunction with a screening of the incredible documentary, They Ain't Ready for Me. My name is Brad Levenberg. I'm one of the rabbis at Temple Sinai and co-chair of the American Jewish Committee's Black Jewish Coalition. The conversation we're about to have will pick up on the filmmaking artistry of the documentary, the relationship between storyteller and story driver, and we'll follow up on some of the incidents and themes showcased in the film. Joining us today are Brad Rothschild, documentarian and director of They Ain't Ready for Me, as well as African Exodus, Tree Man, and the shorts Between Us, Half the Big Sky, and A System of Justice, which addressed the brokenness of our criminal justice system. He's also the producer of a documentary called Kinderblock 66, Return to Buchenwald, and Rabbi Tamar Manasseh, founder and president of MASK, Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killings, an organization that was established in 2015 as a way to put eyes on the streets, interrupt violence and crime, and teach children how to grow up as friends rather than enemies. In addition to this conversation, you can learn more about Rabbi Tamar and her work, as well as how you can be involved by going to ontheblock.org. So, friends, what a great privilege it is. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'll start with just a first question, sort of about the nucleus of the film. I guess it most makes sense, Brad, for you to start this and for Tamar for you to follow up. How did this project come to be?
So it was October of 2016, and I was reading the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, the JTA, puts out a daily email blast with articles. And there was an article entitled, Black Rabbinical Student Leads Army of Moms Against Gun Violence in Chicago. And I said, oh, this is interesting. Let me take a closer look. And there's a picture at the top of this striking woman named Tamar Manasseh. And I go on to read about the organization called MASK, Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killing, that she created, and the unbelievable work that she was doing to combat gun violence in Chicago. But what really captured my attention was when Tamar said that it was her Judaism that was the cause of her activism. And I thought to myself, I need to talk to this person. I need to meet this person, and I need to make a film about this person. So I reached out to her. You know, I didn't know her. I didn't know how to get in touch with her, but through social media and through her organization's website, I sent her an email and I introduced myself as a filmmaker in New York City. And I said, I really think that you would make an interesting subject for a documentary. She didn't respond immediately. It took a while. And finally, I got an email back and it said, thank you for your interest. I think my life is about as interesting as watching the paint dry, so I'm going to pass, but thank you. And I wrote back and I said, with all due respect, I disagree. I think that you're fascinating and I hope that you would reconsider participating in a project, or at least hearing more about it. She didn't say yes, and she didn't say no. She left me with just enough hope not to completely go away. So we continued this sporadic correspondence, and she didn't always respond to me. Sometimes she did. But again, like I said, she left me with just enough hope not to completely give up. And we had 2 phone conversations, and each one was more mind-blowing than the next. And I got off each call and I thought, I need to make this film. But she still was not committing, and I still wasn't giving up. And I wrote to her and I said, I'm going to continue to cyberstalk you in a very respectful and non-threatening way. And she wrote back, okay, which again, it gave me enough that I wasn't going to give up. And then one day I got a direct message from her on Facebook, and she said, I'm in Staten Island. I can meet you now if you want. So for the audience members, I live in New York City. I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Staten Island is technically part of New York City, but is nowhere near where I live. But I wrote back to her immediately. I said, give me 2 hours and I'll be there. And I dropped what I was doing and I drove out to Staten Island and I sat down with Tamar and we talked for a while. And at the end of the conversation, she kind of shrugged her shoulders and she said, I guess if you want to make this film, we can do it this summer. And that was it.
Somehow, Brad, I get the feeling that if she would have said, I'm in Atlanta, I can meet you now, you would have found your way to LaGuardia.
I would have. Actually, I happened to be in Chicago while I was doing this corresponding with her. And I said, hey, I'm here. I can meet you. And she was like, yeah, no, I'm busy. But again, I knew that I had to keep going because I knew that I had to tell this story.
Tamar, I'm wondering what were your first impressions of Brad besides immediately being threatened with non-threatening stalking?
Right. He was very persistent, very, very persistent. I mean, I did admire that. I did admire his stick to itness. I mean, it was nice. Great job, Brad. Great job.
Thank you.
When we finally sat down and talked, the thing that changed my mind is I felt like I'd known him forever. Like I felt like he was just like a kid I went to Jewish day school with, like all grown up. Like I'd known him for like forever. And so it was much easier to connect with him in person than it was over the phone or, just like, well, no, Zoom, we weren't Zooming then, but over the phone, it was so much easier to connect with him when we actually sat down and started talking because it was like, oh, like I understand him. I know him. So it made things a lot easier, actually getting to know him. And honestly, 2 hours to Staten Island, I mean, that is before I knew the lay of the land of New York City. I almost said, you know what? Never mind, don't come. If it's going to take you 2 hours, you can't drop everything and get here right now. We're not doing this. Little did I know that it actually, in reality, takes 3 hours to get from the Upper West Side to Staten Island. And he did it in 2. So there you have it. He was super enthused. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Well, seems like it was a very Beshert moment that the two of you met.
Absolutely.
Brad, how did the story for you morph from when you first read that article to ultimately being able to stand there in Chicago?
So, like I said originally, what was interesting to me is how Tamar credits her Judaism for her activism. And all of like I said, I read this in the JTA. So, Jewish Telegraphic Agency was talking specifically about her Judaism. But in most of the articles that I would read about her and in the news pieces when people would show up on the block, there was nothing about her Judaism. It was all about the incredible work that she was doing. And of course, that is the key. The work is what it's all about. But I wanted to go deeper on this. I wanted to understand the Jewish aspect of this story. And that's what was compelling to me. Obviously, saving children and creating community and, fighting gun violence. These are humongous achievements that most people can't even dream of trying. But for some reason, Tamar was not only dreaming of doing it, she was achieving it. And it was because she was Jewish, at least the way she sees it, that's how she is able to achieve this. So for me, that was a huge part of the story that I wanted to tell.
And based upon your answer, that makes the exchange that Tamar had with the camera, both in the sanctuary and then right afterwards when she was standing on the corner and talking about how she experiences God there as well, as the story even uplifts those two scenes in the film. In the time since the film's been made, most certainly the intention that you both may have had with the film and current events have most certainly enabled this film to take on a life of its own. Knowing how it's being received, Brad and Tamar, is there anything that a storyline or anything that you didn't include that you think would have been important based on current events?
That's a really good question. Tamar, you seem to
I
want to.
think we were ahead of it. I think, the problems that the world is just now starting to see, that America is just not starting to see, we were kind of addressing it in the movie, because these problems have been problems that have been around in my community forever. So, like the issues with the police, that's in the movie. They're the issues with poverty, that's in the movie. All of these things are in the movie. The issues with the criminal justice system, that's in the movie. So it was almost like everybody else was kind of catching up to where the movie already was. So it made the movie even more timely because all of these things started happening after we wrapped.
Mm.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is there's nothing that I wish was in the movie that's not in the movie.
Right.
I mean, like Tamar said, those are the issues that were there front and center every day.
Yeah.
And it's only new to people who weren't living this. So when I was in it, when I was filming, it was clear that those were the issues, the most important issues, of what was happening in Tamar's world. So I mean, I can't think of anything that we didn't put in there that I feel, oh man, that really should have been in there. And now people would understand it more. I think Tamar's right. I think the world is sort of catching up with what was happening on the block already and in places like the south side of Chicago, all over the country.
Mm.
Yeah.
So building off of that answer, I guess I wonder, has the film actually been shown in the neighborhood?
No, it was set to be shown in the neighborhood, but then COVID happened. And COVID just threw everything. It just disrupted everything. So one day we're going to get around to showing it in the neighborhood, but we have to make sure we do that in a place, in a time when it's safe to do so, because everybody doesn't necessarily have internet access there. So everybody can't watch it online. Everybody, don't have the plans where if they do have internet access, they can watch it online. So it hasn't been shown yet, but it will be as soon as we can do so safely.
Tamar, have you been able to report back how the film is being received? Do people understand that they're playing a role in this national conversation that so transcends the neighborhood?
I don't think that I think they're starting to understand it. I think they're starting to understand it finally, and it's terrible. All of the different atrocities and I mean terrible acts that had to happen in order to get people to that point. How much death had to occur, how frightened people had to get, how much chaos it had to be just to get people to the point where they could start actually seeing these things and noticing these things and saying, hey, okay, well, maybe this is not just their problem. Maybe this is our problem. It's sad that it took so much to get us there, but at least we're there now. So now we do have to start having these very honest, very uncomfortable conversations about everything, about, where we're going, where we are now, where we started off at. We have to start doing that now. But I think that people are really open to doing that right now because the past few years have been incredibly uncomfortable for all of us. So talking it out is a little bit less uncomfortable than what we've been through already.
What I think is so profound about the film, in addition to so much else that I think is profound about the film, is the fact that really the subject matter is dealt with in such a sensitive manner that those who have been part of the conversation for a while will most certainly find fuel to continue the conversation in the face of adversity, and those who have either not seen it or perhaps been part of arguments where it has been downplayed will instead be invited to the conversation anew in a very non-threatening manner. So
Yeah.
kudos to both of you.
And Brad really, that level of sensitivity, I wanted the movie, it was almost like a love letter to the block. Like it looked like someone from the block actually made the movie. And so like we really all, everybody who did see it really appreciated that, him being able to make a movie that looked like that.
So that cues up beautifully my next question. I'm so curious about the impact of having a camera crew walking around on the ground. How did people in the neighborhood react? And do you think that there was anything perhaps elevated or artificial to show off for the cameras?
Oh, never. Brad was there so often that people forgot the cameras were there. Like they just forgot the cameras were there because it wasn't like he had a big camera crew. It was just normally him and like one camera guy, and his name's Dan, and he's Dan, the cameraman, and everybody knows him. So it wasn't like this was TV cameras or anything like that. It wasn't like, okay, well, we saw a camera on the block yesterday, so if we turn on the evening news tonight, then they're definitely going to be on television. No, that never happened. So you're seeing this camera out there consistently, but you never see it on the news. And so people were kind of just like, I don't know why they're doing this. So nobody, there were no airs, there were nobody put up any fronts, nothing happened because Brad, after a while, Brad was so absorbed into the fiber of the block that it's kind of like when he showed up, it was just like, oh, that's Brad. Like he's Brad from the block now. He's one of us now. So nobody, it was maybe the first day or so, but even when Brad got there with the cameraman, that wasn't the first time people had ever seen a camera on the block. So it was kind of like, okay, so they're gonna be shooting today. So tomorrow we're, it's oh well. But with it being a everyday thing, every couple of weeks or once a week, something like that, and then you weren't seeing it on TV. People just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they thought I was making like a video diary or something. I don't know. But it was like the camera was there, Brad was there, but nobody paid any attention to them after a while. So there was never a time when anybody did anything um, that was just for the sake of the camera being there.
Brad, I wonder, considering you became such a fixture since the filming wrapped, what has been your relationship with the block and with the individuals who so impacted your life?
I mean, I've been back a bunch of times. Once you spend time there and you get to know the people there, they become your friends and you become their friend. And you want to go and visit your friends. Obviously, the pandemic has sort of has curtailed a lot of travel and a lot of visiting. But I went back more than once, a few times, and it's great. It's kind of weird going back and not having a camera, or not being there with the cameraman and not really having anything quote unquote to do, because there's always action going on there. But it wasn't last summer because of the COVID, but it was 2 summers ago. I was there for a few days with Tamar, and we just were sitting in the chairs with our feet up for an afternoon, watching the world go by. And it was a lot of fun. And it was, I was wistful thinking about, how great it was when we filmed there. But it's always great to go back. I've been back to Chicago twice in the last couple of months, despite the pandemic. Tamar and I have had some work to do, and I was there on the block on Christmas. And every Christmas, or as Tamar calls it, Christmas Hanukkah, Mask delivers toys to needy children in the south and west sides of Chicago, or on the south and west sides of Chicago. There was a caravan of, what was it, 40 cars,
50,
50
about 40 or 50 cars.
of people delivering toys, uh, and it was amazing. It was incredible. It was fun to be a part of it. And Tamar says it, and it's true. Like, there's nothing more Jewish than helping other people celebrate Christmas by giving them gifts. And it's amazing. So seeing people from the block who are now helping other people in other neighborhoods, it's unreal.
Well, incredibly sage and rabbinic wisdom, for sure. Tamara, I'm wondering, in addition uh, to certainly the fact that the life around the block has continued, what has changed since filming wrapped? What are some of the big things that have happened?
This is an early photo. We actually built a school on the lot out of shipping containers. So right now, as we speak, there are children there doing their e-learning, and there are children there getting extra support that they need in school. This is inside of one of the classrooms.
Mm.
So when CBS closed for when the pandemic hit, it was kind of like, what do we do now? But what we did prior to this is we got Jermaine, who you met in the movie. We sent a lot of the young men to trade school, and the idea was basically if you're going to school and you have homework and you actually don't have the time to get killed or to kill someone else, then things get safer. And that's what happened. So we took all of the young people who were the most likely to kill and be killed, and we sent them to trade school. And we paid them to go there. And the most amazing thing happened. It worked. So who knew? So Jermaine, what we did was there were so many other young people in the neighborhood who didn't have those access to those educational opportunities that Jermaine and other kids like him had. What we did was we wanted to make sure we could bring that to the maximum amount of kids. So we decided to start a trade school on our own corner. And so we were working with different construction companies around the city and stuff like that. So we were going to do adult education, GEDs, life skills, and trades and all of this in these shipping containers in this pop-up school. But then COVID hit, and a cousin said, well, Noah, you built the ark and it's raining. So we had all of these little kids who needed something to do because in this neighborhood there are a lot of essential workers and they aren't very well paid. So these are the Instacart shoppers, these are the Uber Eats drivers, these are all of the people that we relied on to help us get through the early days of this pandemic. So what we did was we didn't want those parents having to make the choice between leaving their school age children at home or going to work, leaving them home alone or going to work. We didn't want them to have to make that choice. So what we did was we opened up our school. And so the kids who were doing e-learning, we created a place where they could come and do that, where they could get devices, where they had internet access, where they had adult supervision, where they have hot meals, where they have all of these things, where they can get support with their work. We created a space for them to do that. So basically, the school has been open since March 17th. That was the day that Chicago went on lockdown on with the instituted a stay-at-home order. So we've been open ever since then. So even now, when cities like Chicago are grappling with teachers going on strike and everything else, we still have kids in our classrooms. So they're still getting some sort of education. They're still getting the attention. They're actually getting more attention than what they had in public school because there are more volunteers. There are more teachers per kid now. So this really could have been a terrible experience, but this has really showed us. It's really exposed a lot of the cracks that exist in education in America, that exist in our communities in America. So the thing is, we're ahead of that. We're addressing that before this gets to be a full blown educational crisis, because that's what it's going to be once everybody's taking vaccines and COVID isn't running rampant anymore. It's going to be an educational, just is going to be nuts. So what we're trying to do is get ahead of that and make sure these kids are still competitive, are still up to date on what they're supposed to be learning. They're still meeting the bar for kids in their grades.
And I think that's incredible because you talked about the COVID-19 pandemic, but also we can see other pandemics occurring, overlapping
Yeah,
with the pandemic, including the fact that some are in classrooms and have computers and access to teachers and access
yeah,
to digital learning that will keep them from falling behind, whereas you have
yeah.
others who don't have that same kind of infrastructure.
No, they
And so
don't. And they were already behind, and they're going to fall even more behind because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And so I don't, honestly, I don't see how we address that. I haven't seen anything put into place in this country about how we're going to actually address that. I know when the pandemic hit, I don't know about other places, but in Chicago, there was a text message going around that the city sent out, pretty much deputizing retired healthcare workers. If you were once in the healthcare field or once licensed, can you, we need your help right now. We need all hands on deck. You're going to need something like that for education. Once this is not a health crisis anymore, it's going to be an educational one. And so you're going to need a lot of people. You're going to have to deputize a lot of people. You're going to need a lot of volunteers. And I mean, I went to Jewish day school, so did my kids. And so it's unfathomable to me to sit in a classroom with 30 or 40 kids. But now, I mean, like, I can't imagine a kid learning that way. But now these kids are in a classroom where it's maybe 10 people, but they have maybe 3 teachers. So they are getting things that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And it would be great if we could give that to all of the kids, but we can't. But at least right now, like I'm trying to sound the alarm. We have to get ahead of this thing because it's going to take another decade to truly see the effects of what the time off for this pandemic caused.
Well, most certainly we can see in these moments of fissure both the challenges that we have tried our best to overlook or gloss over or downplay
Mhm.
or ignore. We see them rise to the prominence and force us to engage in a different kind of way. We also see the blessings that occur in the individuals who are able to step up and truly make a difference. I don't know
Absolutely.
what it is that the two of you were talking about when Brad you went to Chicago, but it seems like there's a sequel in the works. Maybe they still be for me.
What did you like to know?
Well, there's a lot more story to tell for sure.
Well,
Uh,
Brad just hangs out with me though. Like really. Like I mean, just quick story. My 40th birthday came. Brad came to Chicago for my surprise birthday party and hid in my basement at my house, and I didn't even know he was here. Like, I didn't even know. I didn't know. And I called him that day and he kind of blew me off. And it was my birthday and I was so upset that he blew me off. And it was just like everybody's being so mean today. Even Brad, little did I know he was in Chicago at that time. So yes, when he comes here, it's not always about sequels. It's not always, like I told you, he is Brad Rothschild from my 6th grade Humish class. Okay. Yes.
It's not always about the sequel, but I think our work is not finished here.
well, it seems for sure that that both of you have been transformed by getting to know each other and by immersing yourself in each other's lives. Tomorrow, I want to ask you, shifting focus a little bit from the filmmaking to the work on the ground and sort of leaning in a little bit more towards the COVID response. I know that it is possible to see the lens, to see your story through the lens of transformation. That really what you have been doing and the impact you've been having on so many of the people in the neighborhood has been transformative, both because of the work you've done and how you've been able to engage each other with each other. There's another way of looking at things that could be perhaps a little bit more transactional, that it's people who are not necessarily interested in learning about and for each other and with each other, but really are looking for the sandwich or looking for the care. So I'm wondering, how do you juggle the nuance between transformational intentions and some people who are completely on board with that, and some people who are, I'd say, perhaps a little bit more jaded or skeptical and are looking more for the transactional surface
The
level?
freebies.
Yeah.
I don't deal with that at all. God deals with that. God deals with that. I mean, people donate food for me to give away. They don't donate food for me to judge the people who I give the food away to. I mean, for whatever reason you're doing this, you have to. Yom Kippur is always coming back. And whether you observe it or not, it's still coming for you one day. So the thing is, however, whatever you do, however, in whatever spirit you take this sandwich, or you take this food, or you take this help, whatever assistance I'm giving you, that's between you and God. If it was given to me to give, I'm gonna give it. I don't care what kind of person you are, or I'm gonna give it because that's what I'm here for. Now, how you receive it, that's your business. But I'm gonna do my part. I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. So whether they see it's transactional or whatever, that's what they see. That's not what I see. Because if I go around saying, how will I ever know who's in it for what if I'm constantly judging people by when they come around and when they don't, or what they say when they're there, what they don't say? Look, if you're here, I'm going to assume you're here to get food, or you're here because you need help, and I'm going to help you. Now, whatever, however you feel about that, that is not my problem. It's not, I can't worry about how you feel about me at the close of the day. I can only worry about how I feel about me. I can only vouch for the work that I've done. Have I been obedient? Yes, I have. That's all I can do.
Hmm.
So I don't so much worry about the reasons why other people do the things that they do or how they feel about it. I don't. I let God, that's why God is God. God deals with that.
Hmm. Uh, Along those same lines, I'm I'm curious to hear both of you respond to this answer, to this question. Um, there's been a lot of talk about social justice tourism or social justice voyeurism. The idea that people from one part of town can travel to the other to get a sense about the issues. It's almost like a classroom on wheels. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering your thoughts about that. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Can it be more damaging or more helpful?
Brad, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it's something that Tamar and I talk about. We talked about a lot because, on the one hand, anytime that you expose people to the way other people live, that's a good thing in theory. But you're right, it can't just be okay, we're going to go down to the poor neighborhood today and we're going to hand out some sandwiches, we're going to feel good about ourselves, and then we're going to go back to our lives. That's not enough. It's a good start. It's certainly, I mean, I don't want to denigrate anybody who wants to help other people, but I think that to be effective and to really be, to use your word, transformative, you can't go to another neighborhood with the feeling that I'm going to go help poor people and then I'm going to feel good about myself. If you really want to get to know people and make change, you have to spend time with them and not just like, okay, I'm going to do this one afternoon and I'm going to check this off my list of things to do. I really feel that if you want to, that people need to make a commitment to getting to know other people as fellow human beings and not as recipients of my largesse or my goodwill, but just as people. So it was really early on when we were filming that uh, there was an unmanned barbecue grill, and we're working, and I see that the hamburgers are burning a little bit, and I'm like, well, somebody has to do something. So I just started to flip the burgers on the grill, and to me it was just like, well, that's what I would do in my backyard. I don't have a backyard, I live in New York City, but that's what I would do at somebody's, you know, cookout or whatever you want to call it, barbecue. Why wouldn't I just do that here? And the idea is you don't behave differently. You should be yourself wherever you go. I mean, hopefully you're a mensch wherever you go. um, and and I feel like just because you're giving charity doesn't mean that people are charity cases. So to me, it's a matter of how you treat people with respect and treat them the way that you want them to treat you. I always felt when I would go down to the block that I was visiting somebody else's home. And when you're a visitor in somebody's home, you have to be respectful because it's their home. It's not yours. You're the visitor. You're the guest. Even if you're bringing, you know, a car full of pizza, you're still a guest in somebody else's home, and you should behave that way.
Yeah.
Tamar?
Pretty much just what Brad said, because we do talk about this all the time. And the thing is, you have to, I don't even think people necessarily feel comfortable coming to the block and it's just a one and done and they're never coming back. I just don't think so, because I mean, like, I know the people that we see who come around every year, we see the almost the same people every summer. So it's like people kind of commit to it. And it's like when you're there, you're kind of forced to push past your own biases. So when people might be going on these social justice tours, and that's not what this is. That's not what this is. Because you can be with a bunch of people who are just like you, a bunch of like-minded people who are just like you. We're all afraid of the same neighborhoods. We're all afraid of, going there alone. So we're going to safety in numbers. We're going to go in a pack. When they get there, they almost feel foolish for doing that because you brought your bias here. It wasn't something you had to bring. You don't, you, what people don't understand until they get there is people here are used to seeing people that look like you. They're teachers, they're cops, they're everywhere. The thing is, you aren't used to seeing people that look like them.
Hmm.
So they're not the problem. You have to work past whatever biases you have because that's the problem. So when they come there, they realize I have to get past this. This is not what I thought it was going to be, and I have to get past it because it is my home. You are having dinner with my family, and it is a different feeling. This isn't a soup line that they're eating. This is our block. This is my family that you're eating dinner with. So you do have to interact with those people a lot differently than you would people who you're just going to quote unquote observe.
Beautiful. I think you're both right. It's all about the kavod that you bring to the exchange. Am
Exactly.
I coming in with respect and honor to respect and honor you? And what I love, Tamar, is that you appropriately put the discomfort on the person who's showing up. You brought
Hmm.
your bias. I love
Hmm.
that. And ideally, these exchanges will transform the way people have created and crafted these biases in their head to transform into good work of their
You
hands.
know, it always does. It always does. And one thing like that I found on that corner is anti-Semitism doesn't exist there because it can't. It just simply can't. Because I'm there and I'm Jewish. Do you hate me because I'm Jewish? Nope. You don't because we're both black. But then when other people who are Jews come to the block, can you hate them because they're Jewish? No, you can't because you don't hate me for that reason. So we can't be anti-Semitic here. And then you can't really actually be racist here either because that's just not how it happens. I mean, everybody knows white people are a lot safer in black communities than black people are. So the thing is, they don't feel threatened. People don't feel threatened when they come there, and they don't feel like, oh, they hate Jews. They don't feel like that either. So it's a different kind of atmosphere when you get there. If people don't like you, they don't like you because they don't like you. It's not because you're Jewish. It has nothing to do with that. It's just because they don't like you because you saw the hamburgers burning and you didn't flip them. Exactly. So that's what it is. It's not anything that we would normally see in another place. So what happens on that corner is people get to meet, they actually get to make friends, to meet Jews, to have conversations with them, to actually see them as people, to make real life human connections, to get to know them. And once you get to know other Jews, you can't be anti-Semitic because you're friends with them now. You're
Mm.
friends now. So it's not like they're any of these things that you hear about on TV. They're not any of these stereotypical things that you see or you hear about. I mean, these are people who come down to the block and I mean, paint little girls' toes and do karaoke with us and cook dinner with us and hang out with us. That's who they are. They aren't, oh, they control the weather and they control the media and that's not who they are. That's not who they are. They're just Brad. They're just Carol. They're just all of these different people. They're Laura. That's just who they are.
Mm.
And so if you don't create a space where we can get to know each other, actually get to know each other, really who we are, then I mean a neutral space where we can do that, then you have misunderstandings. And you have all of these places. It's not in places where people just don't know enough, then they will look at TV and they will get all their information from there. They will take it from there. But if you remove that and you actually make real, actual human connections and introductions, and you really let people actually talk to each other, like it is, like I say with the kids, you teach them to be friends rather than enemies.
Mhm.
You make them familiar with one another. They know each other now. So that's what we've been able to give people by hanging out on that block and allowing people to come there and not just drive through or take a photo, but to actually come and hang out with us.
It's demystifying the otherness of each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of interactions, there were a couple of exchanges that Brad, I'd love to hear a little bit of your perspective, especially in light of current events. Uh, you included two scenes that showcase the role of police in the neighborhood, and I want to ask you about each of those. The first scene with the police officer visiting gave the impression that the police officer was doing community policing. Those who are perhaps a bit more skeptical may assume different intentions. What was your intention with including that scene?
So that's a really interesting question because that officer was there on the first shooting day, which was the first day of summer vacation that year. So it was really my first time on the block. And he was there for a long time. He was there all afternoon. He was having a ball. He was interacting with people. He was having fun. He was eating. And when he left, I said to Tamar, wow, that was incredible. And she looked at me and she said, you'll never see him come back here again. And you know what? He never came back. We couldn't, I couldn't get that part into the film because, how do you show that somebody never comes back other than never showing him again? But, he was there on the first day and he was part of the excitement of the first day. And that's why I kept him in there, um, even though he's really not representative of the way the police interact with the people on the block. It was a hopeful thing on my part and maybe naive on my part, definitely naive on my part. But Tamar knew very well who this person was. She didn't know him personally, but she knew exactly who he was. She said, he's not from the precinct here. He's from the one over, and he'll never come back. And he never came back.
Mm. Um, the second scene, and I think that builds right off of exactly what you just explained about the challenges with the first scene and with that officer's behavior. The second scene wonderfully captured Tamar's frustration after Jojo and his friends were about to be taken away. Why did you choose to include that scene? And have you found that it has played differently when the film was screened prior to the murder of George Floyd and after the murder of George Floyd?
There are a few moments when you're filming when you know that what's happening is going to be in the final product. When this was unfolding in front of the camera, I knew that that was going to be in the film. There was no way that that couldn't be in the film because, on the one hand, you have this horrific scene of tiny children coming out of a police truck. But at the same time, if you listen closely, the police officer says to Tamar, they're not in trouble. And the idea that the police knew enough to go to Tamar with these kids and bring them to her to have her sorted out. They understood these are tiny children. We're talking about what, 5-year-old kids, 4-year-old
Four. One
kids,
of them was
four,
four.
Yeah.
Mhm.
who have no business having any interaction with the police, but the police are sort of stuck with a situation where these kids are stealing water bottles out of a truck because they're thirsty, so they didn't know what to do. They clearly understood that that's not a role for them, but they were also smart enough to recognize that Tamar should be the one handling this. So, how this plays differently, I think, there's a lot of controversy around the slogan, defund the police. But this is precisely a situation where we don't need police involvement, where we need more community involvement. And this, you see this playing out in real time. The cops say, there's a community activist right here. She is better equipped to deal with this issue than we are. Let's let her handle this. And thank God they let her handle this.
I, I guess I just have to ask the question. Tamara, do you think they would have let you handle it if the camera crew wasn't there?
Absolutely. And people, it's so funny that when people see this movie, they often think that scene is staged. But who can really stage something like that? Who can stage little kids in a cage inside of a police wagon? Who can stage that? Who would want to stage that? Who can stage, hey, CPD, can you come and drop those kids off so we can put that on film? No. Who can stage that? People have a hard time believing that this is just an everyday reality for somebody in this country. This happens every day somewhere. And it's so different from the lives of people who watch this movie. From most of the people who have watched this movie, they can't even imagine something like that happening on their block or them being a part of something like that. But that is my life. So that day, it was children stealing water from a truck because they were thirsty. But on any given day, it's a million other little things, because those kids, the reason they bought those kids to me is because the kids were too little to tell them where they lived. And they only knew how to get there walking. They didn't know how to get there in a car. So they knew if I take them to her, she's gonna know how to get them home. She's gonna know how to find their parents. So it's kind of like, there are a lot of situations that come up like that. A lot of these kind of things happen, and it just so happened that Brad was there the day that that thing happened. But that's not the worst thing that we've ever seen on that block. That's not the most mind-blowing thing we've ever seen. That was just the most mind-blowing thing that the camera managed to be there for. But we see all sorts of situations that are completely unbelievable to people who aren't from that community. When they see it, it's unbelievable that these things happen. But they happen every day. And for every one of those kind of events Brad did get on tape, it's at least three or four that he doesn't.
Let me just answer that also. There's no way that those cops knew that we were filming there when they pulled up. There's no way. Like Tamar said, our production team was very small, me and the cameraman. And if you just saw the two of us out there, you wouldn't know that we were filming anything. And that's just part of how we work, is trying to be unobtrusive. When that police truck pulled up, they didn't know they didn't know that there was a film crew there. They had no way to know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It, just for clarity, I think I had intended my question to be more, um, did the film crew's presence, when they became aware of the film
Yeah.
crew's presence, did their posture change at all?
No, I don't think I no, I don't think so. I really don't.
No. And I think honestly, I don't think that police officers are soulless, heartless individuals, all of them. I don't think that. And I think that those cops, if I remember correctly, two of them were black. And I think that, I mean, that had to be handled with some level of sensitivity. This could be what if this is one of your kids?
Hmm.
Like once upon a time, you were a 4-year-old black boy yourself. Can you imagine being in the back of a police wagon in a cage? Can you imagine being so poor to the point where you have to go steal water? So I think that they even felt a little bit of sympathy for those kids. They felt sorry for them.
Definitely.
It was like, like, no, we don't want to make this worse than what it already is, because this is already pretty bad.
Hmm.
That was a day. I mean, everybody lost that day. That was a bad day for all of us, not just for those kids. That was a bad day for all of us.
Hmm.
When we live in a society where 4-year-olds are stealing water out of a car because they're thirsty, what does that say about us?
It says that there's a lot more work to be done.
True.
Before we bring our conversation to a close, so many of the people who are watching the documentary, who have watched the documentary, are going to sit back and say, I'm moved, I'm inspired. What can I do? How do you want to answer their question?
Well, they can find out what we're doing at www.ontheblock.org, and they can follow us on social media. You want to find out what we're doing? I'd say the best place to go to is probably on Facebook, on our Facebook page. But just go and see what it. I mean, we offer so many different ways to get involved. You can go there. You can donate. You can donate your time. You can donate money. You can do. There are a lot of different ways to get involved with this. So you go to the website. You find out all about it.
Are there opportunities to set up other chapters in other cities?
So funny that you asked that, because now we're actually setting up chapters in the deep south now. So we're in Tennessee and we're in Mississippi. So we just got an email the other day from a group in Americus, Georgia. So we will be going to Americus, Georgia, because if you call us, we come, and we will go pretty much anywhere and help people organize. So that's what we're doing. So we'll be in Georgia soon too. Hopefully one day we'll get invited to Atlanta.
Well, I love that. Let's consider this the invitation. So for everyone who's so inspired and certainly understand, and I'm sure that the donations of resources would be incredibly helpful, but so would the transformative work of being able to get behind setting up a mask chapter here in Atlanta. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you, Brad, both for the work that you put into to changing the world, and the documentary, for showing us the unique relationship between documentarian and subject, and for inviting us into your hearts, into your homes, and to be participants in your story. On behalf of the AJFF, thank you to all of our audience members for sticking around and sharing this with others.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.